Hello everyone, welcome to our AppMod webinar.
Welcome to this Cloud Direct webinar in concert with Microsoft. Today we're going to be exploring Microsoft applications and how they can unlock agility. So welcome back to the frequent flyers. So we're going to look at sort of understanding application modernization. What do we really mean by that? And the different strategies involved in that. We will talk about the customer and their journey and the best practice for successful modernization journey, as well as how Microsoft and Cloud Direct can help you along that journey. So once again, as always, I'm your host, Principal Cloud Evangelist here at Cloud Direct. My name is Leon Godwin, and today we're here with Ty. Ty, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Leon. Hi, everyone. I'm Ty Brennan. I'm an Azure data, apps, and AI specialist, so focusing a lot on our cloud native and PaaS technology. I'm here based in Dublin.
Excellent. So we're very lucky to have Ty with us today because he's got a wealth of experience, and that's going to, I think that's going to add a lot of value to this webinar. Ty also has, much like me, a sort of strong AI bias, so I'm sure that will come up in today's session. So let's think about why would you consider application modernization? So different organizations have different needs. Some are looking to grow their business. Some are just about delivering more efficiently what they're already doing. And some are about engaging their staff and enabling them to become more productive. And some are looking to enhance their digital security. These are just some examples of the top priorities that we see businesses that look to adopt a modernization strategy. So when we look at this holistically, for a lot of organizations, it can be about agility. And with the cloud and with Azure, you get that agility. And I'm talking specifically about public cloud, not private cloud, because you have very scalable infrastructure, which is obviously much more constrained within the private cloud, but almost infinite scale within the public cloud. You can reach almost everywhere. I've lost count of how many locations Microsoft data centers are in, but you can guarantee there's one not far from you. And its ability to be able to provide that transition from your on-prem, whether it be private cloud or traditional hosted servers, maybe colo data center, and reach out to the cloud, that agility play is very important to a lot of customers. One of the things that I think is often overlooked really is the time to market. There are so many traditional procurement models that stifle innovation and the ability to adapt. So for example, most organizations will procure their security technologies maybe on a 5-year cycle, which means you get these kind of large steps and then this long static period of 5 years. The trouble is the pace of security is changing. The needs with the advent of AI, I was doing a talk in London last month about how AI has resulted in a 10-fold increase of the number of attacks that are taking place, largely because of the capabilities of generative AI. But this Azure marketplace and the toolings available means your time to be able to deliver a new capability is just a few mouse clicks away. It's a much faster ability to adopt. You can deploy with templates incredibly rapidly, like really rapidly. I work with honestly most digital banks in the UK, and many of them are basically crashing and burning and re-releasing their infrastructure multiple times a day as they're doing feature releases and these kind of green-blue kind of architectures, having pre-built AI models. That marketplace in terms of Azure AI Studio, there are loads of models now, and those that have been paying attention this morning or possibly yesterday, may have seen this sort of advancements on the DeepSeek models. Incredibly capable models, kind of right up there, if not slightly more advanced than the models from OpenAI and Anthropic. but at a fraction of the cost. I was doing some maths earlier, and I think it worked out. It was over 1,000% cheaper. These are profound changes that are going on in that space that can be a massive enabler for you as an organization to modernize. So having those templates, having those blueprints, having those marketplace, having those models available means you can adopt and react to change much more quickly. And adopting things like serverless computing, when I think of modernization, there are kind of two schools of thoughts, and I'll come on to this in my next slide. But really, I have a bias towards those that are moving away from traditional infrastructure as a service and moving up that cloud stack to deliver greater efficiency, the power, and to be able to change there is quite profound. And I'll be able to give you some kind of examples of customers who have done that, or indeed other organizations that have done that. And then you've got your IT simplification. Just, are you looking to move away from your legacy pieces of tin into a more modern cloud native or modern architecture setup, where you can have those unified toolings, whether it be Azure Arc or having a common monitoring platform, having that kind of holistic visibility, control and governance of your environment that is enabled through Azure is another big driver. So when I was coming up with this, I was asked to go and do this webinar. I had to sort of think about those kind of two scenarios in which customers might look to modernize. So there are those customers that want to change, but what's the nature of their change? The nature of their change is, I have something existing that I am looking to change. And so this could be something as simple as moving services you have today, say, into Azure VMware service, or you looking to adopt containers with orchestration with adopting Kubernetes. You could be looking to modernize your application. So no longer are you running Windows Server operating systems with IIS. You start running app services, or you're actually building in logic to automate things rather than the scripts that you might be running today. And you might introduce Azure Functions. I'm a huge fan of Azure Functions. I think they're incredibly powerful and ridiculously cost effective. There are other people that might be looking to say, right, well, actually, I've got all these kind of applications. I think we've all done it. That's payroll data, that's sales data, that's marketing data, that's finance data, and they've all probably got a SQL backend. And we think of these kind of applications in these silos, but actually, from a management point of view, delivering that with a managed service, say with Azure SQL, which has loads of management features baked into it, can deliver greater optimization, both in cost and performance. And then, of course, you have that scalability, whether you're looking to get away from that constrained infrastructure that you have today to be able to be more scalable with, whether it be through front door or load balancing or a whole suite of other technologies. There are that group of users. This is what I have today, and I'm just looking to do things better with what I have today. And then there is the other group of users that are looking to modernize, and they're looking to introduce something new to deliver a paradigm shift in their organization. So modernizing their data with the likes of Microsoft Fabric, incredibly powerful suite, really love Fabric. Basically, it kind of takes you nearly all the way on that AI journey. It's kind of 80% of that AI journey just in one tool set. And then the bits that you're missing are things like the Azure AI services that exist. AI Studio, Azure OpenAI, there's a whole bunch of tooling that sits within that space. And lots of organizations are looking to adopt AI. Microsoft have gone through a number of different iterations with their interface when it comes to AI to actually make it much more simple to adopt AI solutions, and there's a whole bunch of sort of ancillary services that sit around that I will talk about that can be enablers for AI and data. Then you've got a whole bunch of cloud native features where people are saying, well, today I have servers, but actually going forward, I'm interested in serverless computing. So what does that mean? And I think Ty's going to touch on that. So these are, again, something new that you're not doing today, but you're looking to deliver, whether it be better, faster, cheaper in terms of your operations, or delivering new and better outcomes for your stakeholders, whether they be internal or external. Automation paired with AI is ridiculously powerful. AI is like having the smartest person in the room with you. Automation actually means they're doing something that's of value for your business. Microsoft have those logic apps, Power Platform, and a whole suite of other tools that enable automation within your organization. If you are looking and you are considering modernization, start with the perspective, what can I automate? And where does it require a human in the loop? And can that human in the loop be replaced with AI? For a lot of you, for most organizations, that most certainly should be true. Everybody processes invoice, for example, but largely that can be a manual operation. Why not have I actually built this for my daughter, and she works in a veterinary practice, and I delivered an automation solution to her. So all the blood test results that were coming through were processed, analyzed by AI, and information was collected and distributed as it should have been, rather than requiring manual intervention and a lot of user effort. And it saved profound amount of time. And then there's the security. I do a security series with Cloud Direct, and we also do various other events. We've done the Winston Churchill War Rings. We were recently on HMS Belfast talking about the change in the security landscape and how actually the attackers are coming at you with AI, and a human being just cannot react fast enough. So actually having AI as your defensive partner, enabling you to react much faster than a human can be incredibly powerful. And I suspect Ty may also touch on that. So just on that security piece, there are a whole suite, and this is just a small sample of when organizations are maybe looking to modernize, maybe they're looking to modernize in their security. You've got that Defender for Cloud. That's all about providing greater resilience. You've got Sentinel that's giving you the insights to understand what happens. So you try to keep them out, then you have the intelligence to know they've got in and that you need to react. That you've got your network security in place. That again, that's about trying to keep them out should they get in, but to prevent them from getting in. And then you've got Microsoft Purview that provides the governance and assurance that you need to have visibility about what's going on across your estate. And then you've got the co-pilots that can translate what is a large amount of sensory data and translate that into very consumable, easy to understand language. And if you're interested in any of those components, it's probably worth looking at our security series that we've done, where we've explored that with our Microsoft colleagues. So think about your cloud maturity. As you sit listening to me rabbit on now, think about your cloud maturity. Where are you today? Are you an organization with existing on-prem applications, or are you an organization that has already started that shift into cloud? So maybe you've gone from on-premise service and you're starting to adopt infrastructure as a service. What this webinar is about is really the next two steps. It's about optimizing what you're doing in the cloud better, faster, cheaper, and modernizing your applications to deliver more value. That could also be better, faster, cheaper, but additional capabilities within them. So this it's the last two boxes we're focused on. So think about where you are in the journey and where you might be looking to go as your next step. So when we think about, I'll put another slide which is coming up in a moment around sort of innovation and what is it you're actually looking to achieve, because within all these things you should really be thinking about your business needs. Once upon a time we kind of had an IT mindset when it came to infrastructure, but now the business is our client. We need to be able to deliver value to our key stakeholder, which is the company in which we work for. So it could be that you're looking to reduce costs or empower employees. Having that kind of your operations as it relates to your costs, understanding your budgets, understanding how things scales, getting those insights, getting things under control, using repeatable templates, and making use of Microsoft funding. And that last one, I can't stress this enough. I'm not allowed to phrase it as you're just leaving money on the table, but you really are, because Microsoft are putting a lot of skin in the game to make capabilities that they have more accessible and minimizing that cost of change. And not enough organizations are making use of those. We're particularly adept at working with Microsoft to get funding. In fact, I think we rank third in Europe in securing funding for our clients. There are lots of opportunities available, and not enough organizations are taking advantage of that. And that's just leaving money on the table. Could be around security and SecOps. You know, Microsoft have, I was chatting with one of Teague's colleagues recently about security, and they maintain a number of standards and templates to align with those standards. But every day, because there's so many they support, there's over 200 changes every single day that Microsoft have to stay on top on for all these different standards, whether it be NIST or PCI DSS and a whole suite of others. They put that time and effort into templating and making these things faster and repeatable for you, so you can have a more secure operations. Zero trust is a big one. I think I'm actually doing a talk next week on that for anyone who's interested. We're discussing what is zero trust and why is it important, and that principle of having the least amount of privilege you need to do your role. Understanding compliance and regulation. Whilst this has always been important, I think it becomes ever more important with the adoption of AI and understanding what's going on. And making use of managed services. And I'm not hawking Cloud Direct's managed services when I say this. I'm talking about the managed services that are caked inside Microsoft services. They take a lot of the patching, the headache, the reporting, the alerting. There's a lot of management features that are caked into a lot of their services that can deliver a lot of value. And then you've got the speed of development. Years ago, and people have probably heard me say this many times, I didn't know how to code at all. I mean, just at all. .NET is the end of my email address. Python to me is something I'm trying to avoid out here in Thailand. It's not a programming language. However, I have created .NET and Python applications using AI at incredible speeds. I've built portals, automations, things that can go and extract data from PDFs, all sorts of business process aligned AI things. I can do them and create them usually in a few hours, whereas historically that might have been something that would have taken months. And I don't have that background. Imagine what those tools could do in the hands of someone who actually does understand code. So being able to leverage those best practice that Microsoft make available, having the tools such as all the different program languages that Microsoft make available, and the AI models they make available, and then the toolings like GitHub Copilot and the integration with VS Code. All these things are all about standing up and failing fast if that's the way you're going. You know, you can test, you can experiment. That's not for me, but this works. Let's go and focus on that. And you can do it incredibly quickly. And when you're doing things quickly, you're saving a lot of money. So DevOps is kind of the way organizations should be thinking about how that they don't just manage your applications, but how you manage your estate and your IT estate. So when I was putting this this deck together, I thought about what is it, what do we mean by innovation, and what part does it play in application modernization? So I started putting these slides together, thinking about you as the audience. I'm thinking, well, what kind of innovation are you looking for? It could be that you're looking for something like you're looking to accelerate innovation within your organization through the adoption of advanced technologies. But what technologies would be the enabler for that innovation activity? So I've started putting this together, and anybody who wants these slides, they're more than welcome to them. So Azure Machine Learning. This seems like a bonkers crazy thing that's really, really complicated. I tell you what, Microsoft make it so easy with these notebooks. I built a fraud system from Azure. Never seen machine learning at all. Microsoft have got this kind of guide that runs you through. They supply you the data and you run through to understand it. After about 25 minutes, you've kind of built your own machine learning model that is capable of understanding fraud on their supplied data set in that specific scenario. But it's how they can accelerate your understanding. It sounds big and scary. I was intimidated by it. 25 minutes later, I thought, oh, actually, that's quite easy. Activator. If you are looking to have data within Microsoft Fabric, if the state or condition of that data changes, for example, those of you may have been familiar with the phrase, if this, then that, is a tool that can turn around and say, right, this has happened, so now I need to undertake this task. Think of it like a data-orientated version of Power Automate. If this trigger event happens, I will undertake these activities. And so that can help innovate and speed things up. If you haven't played around with it already, play around with Azure AI Studio. There are a number of different templates. I built a law bot in about 25 minutes. I fine-tuned on property law for dummies because that's all I had access to at the time. But the point is imagine instead of it being public domain data, it's your business data, has your business context. So pairing AI, these models that have this cognitive ability with your data, that's called resource augmented generation. It's capable of understanding and doing things, and there are levels beyond that, such as agentic frameworks. We won't go into that today. There's Microsoft Bot Service. This is about providing that conversational bot. You've all used ChatGPT, Claude possibly, Gemini maybe. This kind of interface that actually has a lot more intelligence can deliver a lot of power. We've delivered solutions for customers where we've had to fine-tune responses to ensure they can't hallucinate because there is a risk to life in certain customer scenarios where, so we had to fine-tune everything to make sure the answers it was giving were very appropriate. And then you've got search services and you've got Databricks. These are other data orientated services. So if you're looking to adopt modern, innovative technologies, have a look at some of those. So let's click back on the face. And I'm going to whiz through these quite quickly. Like I say, I'm going to make these slides available to anyone who wants them. But these slides are about saying, okay, what is my area I'm looking to innovate, and pairing them with the specific technologies. So if you're about aligning your IT with your business objectives, a lot of that is going to be around cost. A lot of that is going to be around security. A lot of that is going to be around compliance and identity. So these are all the tools, and this is just a flavor of the tools that can help you in that particular objective. Likewise, if you're looking to undertake a digital transformation, there are a number of different technologies. Azure Virtual Desktop, done correctly, can be incredibly cool and incredibly powerful. So these are sort of things I would encourage you to look at. Understand what the benefits of Microsoft Security Center are. It can save you a lot of time and effort as you look to go and transform. So I'm just going to pick on one more of these in terms of hybrid, because I suspect that some of you in the audience are still handling and dealing with on-premise infrastructure, and maybe hybrid is the way forward. So have a look at Azure Arc. I think we've actually done some webinars on this, so you can probably find them on our YouTube channel. But Azure Arc is about taking that control plane that exists within Azure and extending out beyond Azure into your data center, so you have that control plane visibility all from one place, regardless of whether your resources are on-prem or in the cloud. Azure Migrate, great tool, really good. It's part of a funding package that we'll touch on a bit later. That can be really, really useful. Express Route, when especially if you're dealing with software-defined networks, having that express route, this private high-speed connectivity into Azure, again, can help solve for those hybrid scenarios. Event grid and logic apps are another way in which you can deliver integrations within your hybrid and on-premise infrastructure. So again, if any of these kind of themes resonate with you, please reach out, let us know, and we'll be happy to dive deeper into any of these. So I'm just going to go to the next slide, which is with Teague. So Teague, I think you're going to, I think I'm going to stop sharing and you're going to take over sharing. If you haven't already, I'm sure George is dealing with that in the background. So let me know when you're ready to start and we'll hand over to you.
Yep, it's all good. Thanks a lot, Leon. So hi everyone, wanted to take some time today to give a bit of a view of how Microsoft sees some of that modern app development, and also talk a bit about the future ahead and talk about some of why we want to do app modernization, and then how we can support that app modernization journey with Cloud Direct and Microsoft through some of our funding channels as well, before handing back to Leon at the end. Now, the main core areas that I want to talk about is this AI and cloud native technologies. We see this as kind of the dream combination for the way ahead in terms of app mod. And the reason why we kind of see that as the approach for us is that a lot of the reports, a lot of the documentation that we're seeing now and actually seeing with real businesses in the world is people starting to modernize their applications and reinventing those applications. And we see a world where pretty much every app will be reinvented with AI. New apps will be built that weren't possible before, and a lot of historical applications are being adapted so that you've got things like generative AI. It might be an internal application or an external application or something you already built, but this is the kind of journey we're starting to see across multiple different industries. And now there's a couple of reasons why, and you can probably see there's a large number on the screen of 4.4 trillion in value. But the way we kind of see the reasons how we get to that is very much around actually the value that app modernization brings back to a business. And that's the core reason really as to why we do app modernization as well. Sometimes it's a play that, hey, we need to keep up with technological advances and keep up with some of the changes that happen from an application point of view, whether it's kind of traditionally moving from larger monolithic applications, breaking them out into a bit more of a microservices approach. That's kind of the journey that we've seen so far, but we're now seeing in terms of the value that generative AI can bring back into the applications. So what we're really seeing is that some of these technologies actually have the potential to typically absorb up to about 70% of an employee's time today. And that's where we kind of see the creation of those trillions of dollars of value across multiple different industries. And these innovations are things like personalized recommendations, connected smart products, you've got information discovery, fraud detection. It's not just, hey, let's put a chatbot in play and then we see value back. There's a lot of different interesting use cases to some of these generative AI applications as part of that modernization journey. And to give a view of that journey and where we're seeing it going, these are kind of the categories that have traditionally been deployed. So on the left-hand side, you've got the modern app, a microservices-based architecture. We're starting to do rapid innovation with CI/CD approaches and a lot of other modern app development principles. And the way that we're seeing things go from a Microsoft point of view is very much down the lens of, we've got a modern app, but when you start to infuse the AI capabilities, when you start to add additional value, we're starting to call these applications intelligent apps. And so typically, intelligent app might have a natural language interface. It might be a bit more data-driven. You've got the personalized experiences, and then also an area around automation. It's much more enhanced and streamlined to how we do things. But a little bit more on what are intelligent apps. And we kind of see them today as the combination of application development with cloud scale in terms of being able to ready to grow your business. And that's one of the other reasons of application modernization, right? is to be able to keep up with the pace of your own business, and importantly, so that your business can grow over the next 5 to 10 years. You don't have that bottleneck of, hey, our .NET application, it can only really handle 10,000 users running on it at once. But what if the business grows to 100,000, right? We don't want costs to have to massively scale with the users that we scale. So how can we, find the best balance? How can we make sure that the application can keep up with that growth? And a lot of that is really kind of fine-tuning down on the right platform and how your application is architected. And so some of the intelligent apps side of things touches on that. It touches on that scalable high performance. Some of you think about the managed databases that are involved now. I think the likes of Cosmos, and from a global point of view as well, Cosmos DB is very much supporting the way that businesses can modernize and grow across the globe, essentially. Now at Microsoft, we kind of see this as our end-to-end platform for intelligent apps. And you're probably thinking, hey, there's quite a lot on the screen. And that's true. There is a real combination of multiple different areas. So highlighted in the middle is very much around the application side of things, so our cloud native platform. So you've got the likes of Azure Kubernetes Service, in combination with Fleet Manager. You've got Azure Container Apps, and Leon mentioned earlier as well around Azure Functions. But an application isn't just that, right? There's typically a backend, there's data that's involved. You've got how do you front a lot of that, whether it's through an API approach. And that's kind of what we want to get across here, is that with a modernization, it's not just around that application. You really need to think about the wider platform as a whole and how those systems integrate with each other. Logic Apps is a classic example of an integration service, but we need to consider the other underlying downstream services that are going on here, whether we're looking at managed database side of things or starting to integrate a lot of the AI services, the things like Azure OpenAI or some of the machine learning side of things. Leon touched around the ML Studio stuff. That's stuff that people can get started with, but how do you integrate that into your application? And this is the wider platform play that we really want to consider as part of a modernization and some of those best practices. Now, we're not just going to talk about, hey, this is what you need to do app modernization. These are the best practices. Kind of wanted to talk about that actually at Microsoft. We've been doing this for a little while. If you think about a lot of our core applications, so the likes of Bing, you've got the Office suite, Microsoft Teams, Xbox, and GitHub. These are all applications that we've gradually been modernizing and putting into the lens of our intelligent apps. So whether it's, for example, a lot of the Azure OpenAI integration in with Bing and some of the ChatGPT-based services, you've also got the way that Copilot integrates within Teams from an application point of view, adding AI-powered meeting recaps. There's also the personalized recommendations from an Xbox point of view. A lot of these different services are all becoming intelligent apps for us. And that's the way that we see a lot of the industries tend to be going on this point of view. And we want to highlight that, hey, we're having these challenges. And to be honest, we're having them at a massive scale as well. So how do we get over that? And one of the core components to a lot of that is actually Azure Kubernetes Service. So all of these services that I'm highlighting at the moment and different products that are in play here, all on the back end point of view, the underlying infrastructure run on Azure Kubernetes Service. And that's a really important part in terms of how we feel confident in being able to scale to 460 million users on Office, the number of users on Xbox, and the number of developers that we have on GitHub. A lot of that scale is because of the platform that we chose and the way that things are architected. Now, there's an important thing to understand as well before we go around that modernization point of view, is what's the business value as well. There's a couple of things. One of them is around, for example, the speed of competition. Being able to outpace your competitors is really important to driving innovation, to being able to say that your business can grow. And a lot of that, as to why we want a modernization, is to allow for things like that, allow for the scaling of the business, allow for us to be able to rapidly deliver new products that deepen the customer engagement side of things, and also really just to amplify a lot of employee capabilities. Give that time back to our developers so they can focus on different releases. They can focus on some of the really innovative things, whereas they don't have to be sort of bogged down in maybe some of the error coding side of things. They're able to use the likes of GitHub Copilot to give them time back so they can focus on more valuable things that drive real business impact. I think one of the sort of key customers who did this on Azure, and I guess one of the highlight stories from a platform point of view that Microsoft will often talk about, is ChatGPT and Azure OpenAI. So Azure OpenAI with ChatGPT became the fastest growing customer in one of our products in history ever, and that was on Azure Kubernetes Service. And they went from a couple thousand users to about 200 million within a month, just because of ChatGPT. And we were able to manage that scale because the application runs on Azure Kubernetes Service. Some of the database and the way that you do context is managed and backed by Azure Cosmos DB. And from a development point of view, it was all developed on GitHub. And so every time you interact with ChatGPT, you're interacting with Azure services under the hood. And that's an important thing to consider when you think about platform scale and the modernization approach. So every time you interact with ChatGPT and you ask it a question, and then you want to ask it another question, and you want to make sure that it understands that context, that's all Cosmos DB in the background, making sure that we can keep track of the history of a conversation, that a lot of those tokens get stored. And that's all around the platform play. Now, from an industry point of view, there's a lot of benefits of Kubernetes. And we think probably 20, 15 years ago, there was a massive play around which kind of container orchestrator would win out. And eventually it was Kubernetes. And when you consider some of the advantages of Kubernetes, you understand why that happens. If you think of applications being able to be developed independent of the infrastructure that they're on, a really important aspect, you can actually kind of declare the way that you want things to be done with a declarative configuration. You can get the desired state of your application using Kubernetes, and you can schedule. You can make sure that your application can grow. If it's on a Black Friday kind of event, you can schedule for uptime then, or you can schedule as well for when you want things to be less in demand, for example. And that's a really important aspect of Kubernetes and the container orchestration. Another areas we think about it is how do our containers, if something goes wrong, we don't want it to all break. And so Kubernetes offers the likes of self-healing as well. It understands when a container isn't working and can take away that pod. It can put it back into a cluster. And it's a really important part of that modernization, is being able to deal with loads of different sort of scenarios that come up and the challenges that we might have when we have an application and we're looking to scale it. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can run any of these applications with the likes of Kubernetes under the hood. And I wanted to give a view of a couple of the different options that we have on Azure. One of them is around Azure Container Apps. And this is very much a kind of PaaS service in the way that app service is involved. So if you've got a .NET web app or any kind of web app, for example, most of the time you can typically run it in app service, and all you need to provide is just some of the source codes, and then you don't need to worry about things. Azure Container Apps is very similar in that aspect. You provide it with a container image, and then it will go ahead and run things. You don't have to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure. It's purely pretty much a PaaS service. And then on the other side of things, you've got the Azure Kubernetes service. So what this is more in-depth view of Kubernetes. It's essentially our managed Kubernetes view of things in terms of how we think Kubernetes should be run, but we give you that freedom of being able to change some of the infrastructure, being able to manage the nodes and clusters on your machines. We give you that freedom. And so you've got a bit more responsibility, but sometimes that responsibility is necessary. You need to be able to adapt with different day-to-day business requirements from the application. And this is a kind of visualization of that option of more control compared to simplicity. And so from a container apps point of view, you've got an opinionated built-in way of doing things, and it's very much the serverless event-driven scale. So you can scale up and scale down, and we'll manage that side of things. As you get more control and move towards an Azure Kubernetes service, it's more of the industry standard. It's much more what you may have done in a load of different scenarios. And it gives you access to all the different kind of policies that you might want to make, a load of custom scenarios and really specific kind of scenarios that you might have from an application modernization point of view. Now, things aren't easy though with Kubernetes and application modernization. There's kind of a reason why typically it takes a while when we go through an app mod journey. That's because there's loads of different challenges, right? And Kubernetes doesn't shy away from having a lot of challenges. A lot of the feedback we sometimes get is, hey, there's too many options. I don't really understand. Should I be doing this type of cluster? Should I have my pods in this way? What policies should I be applying? There's a lot of different options for that. And this leads into a really difficult learning curve, actually. And it takes a while for people to really get their head around the Kubernetes side of things and the platform play, particularly if you're spending a lot of time just developing an application and working on that side of things. The last thing you're kind of thinking about most of the time is the underlying infrastructure, particularly if you're just developing on your own machine or you have a local kind of environment where infrastructure isn't really a worry. You're not worried about scaling patterns and things like that. It can take a while to really get a grip on what Kubernetes is and the best way to utilize it. And this is a challenge from a business perspective as well, because then you have to find the right talent. You have to find the right people to be involved in your organization to help with that view. And then lastly, that onboarding process. When you found those people, it still takes time to onboard, to get people ramped up and up to speed with how you want to do your view of app mod. So one of the things that we changed, and actually we announced very recently at Microsoft Build, is what's called AKS Automatic. And so this is the easiest view of Kubernetes for an app modernization and intelligent apps point of view. So what we do is we allow you to essentially go into production ready by default, because we give you those built-in best practices and safeguards. And so you can take the code that you have and you can have it running in Kubernetes in a matter of minutes. And there's a few ways that we do this, right? So normally when you've got Azure Kubernetes and AKS standard, you've got loads of different areas to think about from an app mod point of view. You've got to think about how do you define that application and the workloads? What does it need from an infrastructure point of view? How can you monitor that app? You've also got to then create and manage all the clusters and node pools that are relevant for the app. All the resources needs to be refined, policies in place, and configuration. You've also got the networking side of things. There's a lot to do with security. Think about patching, version updates. We see a lot of customers where, hey, we're on version number 1.28, and actually that's going end of life next week, but we don't feel comfortable upgrading it. We don't have the, I guess maybe the skills or the understanding to ensure that the application is safe, and if we upgrade, what happens? And so there's loads of different things that we have to look out for. So what the product group wanted to do is wanted to take away a lot of the large concerns with that. And a lot of those large concerns are all around the infrastructure side of things. So creating those clusters and node pools, defining the needs and the resource side of things, being able to scale. And that's what AKS Automatic does. It allows you to really just focus on the application side of things. A lot of the app mod point of view is, hey, we actually just want to focus on that user experience, because that's what the user sees. That's what our users of our apps are really concerned about. They're not concerned about the underlying infrastructure that's going on. A lot of people, when we talk about ChatGPT living on Azure, it's not really that important as long as it works and they can get their response back and the user interface makes sense and they can use it, then that's the main goal of app mod, right? But we can't stress the importance of the underlying infrastructure being able to serve that to a customer. And so AKS Automatic separates out that concern, allows our developers and folks within business to just focus on those application points of view and monitoring them. And we'll manage the rest of that. And that's something that's recently announced and is available now that you can go ahead and try. The other area of interest around the AI and cloud native services is how do we do AI development using Kubernetes? And we see that quite a bit now. There used to be a lot of challenges, right? So you'd have to download or store a large model. This can be 200 to 400 gigs in size. You've got to then create the container file to reduce the model weights. You then have to host that model image, provision the right GPU infrastructure, a load of other things, right? That's quite disjointed and it can take a while. And this, when we think about, infusing AI into an app, and you might have your application that already sits on Kubernetes as serving customers well, but you want to be able to develop an AI app, you want to be able to add personalization and things like that, all the things that we discussed earlier, then we need a fairly simple way to do that. So one of the things that we announced as well recently is what's called Queso, or the Kubernetes AI Toolchain Operator add-on. And so what this allows you to do is completely separate out, again, the infrastructure asks or the complicated parts to do with the platform. We can separate that out, and we only need to focus on the development of the app. And so what we've got here is we will load the model weights, we'll do the model containerization, we'll host the image, and we'll provision the GPU infrastructure. All of the really sort of challenging aspects to an AI app mod, we'll take that away and allow you to just focus on the application. It's a really important aspect to all that. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is to do with scale. And one of the areas that we have a lot of scale in is the Azure Functions side of things. And so this is an idea of scaling down to 0 or scaling back up. If you've got small snippets of code, or maybe you've got a scenario where you've got a lot of API usage, Azure Functions is a great way to do that. And it's a classic example of how we're seeing a lot of people initiate app modernization discussions. They might have an API that they want to try out and is extending the capability of the monolith app by adding this cool API. But this allows you to do it in a cost-effective way. I know Leon touched on it a little bit earlier as one of his favorite services. And I wanted to showcase an example of Azure Functions Flex Consumption Plan, which is a new plan that's focused around giving scale, but importantly, allowing you to integrate with your virtual networks, something that we see as a challenge at the moment. And so I've got a scenario here where we've got essentially a load of customer feedback and support cases that are hitting our Azure function. We're going to go through event hubs to then be processed downstream by our AKS application. There's going to be a custom model downstream, but I just want to focus on the function side of things and showing you the different types of scale that we have. So I've got a little video here to show this. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into our Azure function. I just want to show you some of the metrics here. And so you start to see some of the information coming through. So we're going to do a couple of different load tests on our Azure function. So first, we've got our Azure load test service, and we're going to hit run on this. And then we've also got a loader.io load test as well. We're going to hit run on that one as well. Right now, we're just in our Event Hub namespace, and I wanted to show you the networking side of things. So here we've got public access completely disabled. So typically, our function is now off of any kind of public network. It's not going to be able to interact with our Event Hub because our Event Hub is disabled public access. So we've got to create a private endpoint connection, which we are doing here. And I'll just show you in this command, we can view the different connections that we have. So right here, we've got a connection from our function app as part of our VNet. And we're only allowing private networking to our Event Hub namespace so they can deal with the requests. So here's some of the metrics for what we're seeing. I want to focus, we're seeing up to 113 servers. And what we're looking at is about 20,000 sort of requests per second there. And this is within the space of like 10 to 15 seconds worth of scale up. And that's what I really want to focus on and show you is the pace of scale that the platform can now deliver. And this is an example of that growth. So in this scenario, in this demo that recorded 8:01 p.m., we've gone up to 103 servers. By 8:02, when our second load test kicked in, we've gone up to 176 servers. And we were able to deal with that massive amount of scale that may come in from the growth of the business or an app mod point of view. And then at just gone 8:05 p.m., 4 minutes later, we're down to scale down to absolute zero. 0 servers online. And it's a really important thing to be able to scale back down, because one of the important aspects of app modernization is how do we manage that cost, right? And so that's a crucial area. And that just highlights some of the scale. And that's available now through the Azure Functions Flex consumption plan. And then the last thing I was going to mention from an app mod point of view, and particularly when you're looking at utilizing AI in intelligent apps, is some of the announcements we made around Azure Container Apps. So we enabled, for example, you to work specifically with GPUs for your applications. Vector DB add-ons have been available through container apps, so the likes of Quadrant as an example. So if you're looking at from your tokens and how you're doing that from an AI development point of view, you can now utilize your Vector DBs through container apps. And there's a few different ways that you can do that as well. And that's it from pretty much a technology point of view. I'm going to hand back to Leon in a moment, but I just want to highlight that when we're working together with Cloud Direct and Microsoft, one of the areas that we focus on is an area called Azure Innovate. And this is essentially our funding and offerings page. So when you're looking at greenfield app development, you're looking at modernizing applications, all of these and the different scenarios here is what we cover from a funding point of view. And I'll just hand back to Leon to kind of expand a little bit on that and how we can then work together on that.
It's one of those new announcements I actually wasn't aware of, and I find that really interesting. I think when it comes to the app modernization, when you come at the audience should think about things like look at your business process and look at your business needs and where could you do things smarter. So I was watching an interview recently with Sam Altman, and he was talking about, back in 2023, it would cost about $35,000 to create a simple iPhone application and go through that development process. Whereas to go and get a plumber out to go and do some emergency repair would be about $350. But he then posits the question, what would that cost in 2028? And the inference being that because of the use of AI, and I mentioned earlier how I'm managing to create these crazy tools, incredibly powerful tools, without having a development background. And I'm able to do it incredibly cheaply with a relatively low set of skills. It's created a paradigm shift for me. And so that cost is actually going to be lower for the development of those applications than it was to go and call out the plumber, because we're going to see that cost reduce and reduce and reduce, and that's the advent of AI. So think about your business processes. Another sort of example was you might pay, and a lot of us get employed to sit at a desk in front of a screen and do stuff based on our knowledge and experience. So let's say you're paying someone £30,000, but you can get the role and function that they perform delivered by a piece of technology, AI agentic framework, whatever it may be, for say £2,000. Now, all of a sudden, if you don't need that person can focus on something that's of greater value for the business. You're becoming a lot more efficient as an organization. But when you start having these constellations in Microsoft parlance of these agents, for example, or these technologies that use, say, Kubernetes that can be incredibly bursty, they can have a capability and be incredibly responsive and then run down to nothing. So incredibly cost effective. And when I say incredibly cost effective, solutions I've built, you can measure them in less than a cup of coffee per month to run some simple business functions. This becomes really, really powerful. So when you start pulling all these business processes together, kind of in isolation, whether it be the individual or the department or the organization, as you increase in that scale, then the likes of those Kubernetes and having that kind of orchestration platform, and then to be able to integrate that with that AI is quite powerful. And one more example I'll give is I was thinking about my business process. What is it I actually do? A lot of people ask that question. But part of what I do is I understand what's going on in the community as a whole. I also understand what's going on with Microsoft. And I also understand what's going on with the customer and their needs, because I spend a lot of time interacting with customers. And I synthesize all of those sort of three knowledge bases to be able to give value to each. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I could build that. So I set about building a system. I took the vector database that Teague was just referring to, And I use that as my repository of knowledge. And then I set about building using Azure functions and apps, APIs that could go off and capture information from various sources, such as all of Microsoft blogs that would go on, the various Microsoft Learn data, as well as certain YouTube channels that I think are particularly informative. And I could transcribe them with various tools, and I get all that data stored in that database. And then I built a UI to go and do all of this. Bearing in mind, I did all of this inside an application you can freely download called VS Code. I paid $10 a month for Copilot, and I would ask it questions and it would build me these applications. How do I deploy them? Just ask it to go and do it. And it started deploying all these applications in Azure for me. And I'm just sat in front of a single UI using the power of my imagination to create this virtual Leon with this kind of knowledge base. And now I can query it about a customer scenario or problem, and it's able to kind of infer and use up-to-date knowledge to provide recommendations to customers. That's just an example. It's a very silly example because it's about one individual, but think about a business process in your organization. You process invoices. Every organization does. You have an HR, you hire, you onboard, you offboard people, you distribute applications, you provide services to your end user of X amount of quality. How would you increase that quality? So think about it from your business perspective, then translate that into a set of technologies, learn what you've learned from Teague to be able to say, okay, this is what I want to do, but I'm a little bit stuck. So this is where Cloud Direct can come in. We do Azure and we just do Microsoft services. That's all we do. So we have that Microsoft Azure play. We understand, and we are an expert MSP. Everybody's I could get a CSP from my bedroom, but there's only a handful of expert MSPs that have gone through all the auditing and processing to get that certification. And so we understand that modernization. We've got a data and AI practice. We can bring those components together. We have that security lens and focus to help you on that journey. And we do lots and lots of talks around security. As I mentioned, the Zero Trust is coming up next week. We also do the modern work around that M365 adoption, whether that be around Copilot or AVD or just licensing and Microsoft M365 in general. And then you've got all the managed services we can provide. So we have that capability. We just focus on Microsoft. We even structure our teams to mirror the way Microsoft structure their organization to make that fluid. One of the benefits of that, and it's one of the reasons why we're number 3 in Europe at securing funding for our customers, is because we have that deep relationship and understanding, and we understand the art of the possible. So when you think about your business processes that you want to modernize and go through that app mod journey, come to us. We're put together with you, understand your needs, put together a model of what you need, and we will apply for funding for you from Microsoft. So the funding pathways available, such as migration or optimization, or as in this webinar, app mod, there are lots of different funding pathways available. And it's not just Microsoft that are putting skin in the game. It's also Cloud Direct that are doing it. And obviously the customer is going to have some skin in the game. So we've taken customers on different journeys, some of which where the cost of change has been entirely mitigated through funding, and it's only the ongoing costs that the customer is picking up. We can provide managed services. The way we see it is we operate teach, don't sell methodology, where we want you to be independent and not have that dependency on anyone else. But it's a learning curve. So whilst the dependency might be high in the beginning, because we teach and we evangelize and we help you with that adoption and that knowledge sharing, your dependency on others goes down, and you can manage these things yourselves. So if you are thinking about an app modernization journey, get in touch. We'll have a conversation. We'll apply for that funding, and then you can go and take that information to your stakeholders and say, this is what I want to do. This is the cost of change, and this is how much Microsoft and Cloud Direct are going to put in the game to help mitigate that cost of change. So one last thing is that overarching process of assess, plan, implement, operate. So this is this is language that comes out of the cloud adoption framework, this overarching framework that contains sort of frameworks like the well-architected framework underneath it. But the idea is there is a structure. So if you're not familiar with the cloud adoption framework, just Google it. Microsoft have extensive information about it. It's very, very useful. We have lots of other talks and webinars and roadshows that we can where we talk about this if you're interested. But in terms of assessing, that's what is your current application state? How are you looking to go and move, and what will be that velocity? How can we put together a workshop to help with that assessment of your needs? And then how are we going to migrate and modernize? How are you going to use, is it a DevOps process that you're going to be employing? Does that need an assessment? And you can see we go through this structured process that aligns with Microsoft's processes. So when it comes to the assessment, we look at app modernization. We look at workshops to be able to deliver value so you can go and understand it, create that business case and get your buy-in from your stakeholders. This is an incredibly cost-efficient stage, and large amounts of it tend to be funded, if not entirely. Then we would look at more detailed planning. If that stakeholder engagement has gone well and you want to move to the next stage, then we would look at, let's go and do designs, let's do any other assessments, let's do any other workshops that might be required. So you can put those, we can understand the risks and have them mitigated. We can put that plan and that design together to deliver that outcome. And again, supported by funding from Microsoft and Cloud Direct. And then there is the deployment. So are you looking at adopting containers? Are you looking to adopt Kubernetes? What other cloud services are you looking to adopt? What is your capability for your team to go and implement that, or are we doing it for you? And again, funding is available. So we have those structured processes in place. And then it's in and it's live, but we want to maintain that it's efficient and it's cost effective. Do you have the visibility into what's going on with your estate so you can make well-informed decision to make sure it's not just maintained, but it's cost optimal, and it aligns with the principles of something called the well-architected framework. These are the services and capabilities and the mindsets and the journey that you should think about going on if you're looking for application modernization. But it starts with your business need. It decomposes in understanding your business processes and how you might want to change or automate or make them better, faster and cheaper through application modernization. And then it moves into technology. So thank you very much for your time. Is there any final words from you, Teague?
No, just looking forward to a lot of the journeys that people will be going on, and we're always here to help. Thanks, Leon.
Thanks, Teague. Massively appreciate your time. Really insightful. I actually learned a lot because I've been away recently, so I didn't get up to date with some of these recent announcements, especially around the Kubernetes automate. So that's automatic. Sorry, that's very interesting. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on the